Joseph Stiglitz, in your new book, you say that the euro currency is threatening the future of Europe. What happened? I thought that the common currency was supposed to help bring things together.
Not only was it supposed to bring things together, it was supposed to generate prosperity. And it was through that prosperity that it would bring together more solidarity, and then they could go through another stage of political integration. They put the cart before the horse. They decided to have a single currency before they were ready. Politics motivated it, but in the end, they weren't ready to put in place the political institutions, the economic institutions that were necessary to make the euro work. They had taken away two important instruments of adjustment: exchange rate, interest rates. You hit a shock, you need to adjust. They'd taken those away, hadn't put anything in its place, and they tied the hands of Europe, of each of the countries, through restraints on the size of the deficit they could have, and then they required that the central bank focus on inflation, ignoring, in effect, the effects on unemployment, growth, stability.
Well, let's go back to January 1999. Why did Germany enter into this currency compact? That's the industrial engine of Europe. Why did Germany do it?
I think the way to look at it was that Europe as a whole thought that this would bring co-prosperity, prosperity for everybody. There was a thought that there was a trade, that there was one view in history that says that it was a trade-off. Germany wanted to unify, and France had a vision of a united Europe, and the deal was a single currency. Germany would give up its own currency, the Deutschmark, and in return, there would be this major, Germany would be allowed to be reunified. And
in the end, it was actually Germany who had to bail out Greece. Greece went over their budget constraints. So talk about what was in it for Greece, and then who do you think was at fault ultimately? Because the Germans blamed the Greeks, and the Greeks were mad because they felt like they were being pressured too much into austerity.
Well, the story of the Greek bailout and Germany bailing Greece out is a little bit distorted. 90% of the money went from Germany and Northern Europe to Greece and back to German and French banks. So Greece didn't see any of that money. It was not a bailout of Greece as much as it was a bailout of German and French banks. In 2010, Germany was not ready to deal with the problems of the weaknesses in its own banks that would be created by a default in Greece. And so they did this roundabout transfer. Now you ask, who was at fault? You might say, try to parse the blame out. My view is the euro was at fault. The euro had created the rigidities that would not accommodate a shock like the 2008 crisis. In a way, Greece was the worst example, though, for showing the weaknesses in the euro, because Greece didn't do everything perfectly. I mean, they were not a poster child. But Spain and Ireland had a surplus, had a very low debt-GDP ratio, and yet they went into crisis. And that showed the basic model that went into the construction of the euro, that if only countries had low deficits and debts and had this kind of fiscal responsibility, everything would work well. That idea was fundamentally flawed.
And you have an idea for a so-called flexible euro. So how would that work?
Well, you wouldn't have to return to each country having its own currency. You could have, say, a northern euro and a southern euro. That would allow the differences in the circumstances in the north and the south to be accommodated. The result of this would be the southern euro would get weaker, the northern euro would get stronger. As the southern euro got weaker, the countries of the south, Italy, Spain, Greece, would be able to export more, and that would resuscitate their economy. The current account deficits which they had, that is to say they were importing more than exports, would be resolved. And at the same time, the big problem for the global economy are German surpluses. You know, we used to talk about global imbalances and the huge trade surpluses of China. Well, Germany's surpluses are even greater than China's, and that's causing a global problem. So if the exchange rate of the Northern Europe increased, that would reduce their exports and bring a trade balance there.
All right, and then finally, since we're here on Wall Street, we have a lot of speculators who want to make money. So according to your plans and in your outlook for euro, right now it takes $1.13 to buy a euro. What should traders do? Should they short the euro to parity or even further?
So part of this is a bet on the way this divorce is going to occur and who is going to wind up with the label the euro. Or maybe no country will wind up the label euro. If no country winds up with the label euro, I don't know what it means to be betting on what the euro will be, because the euro won't be. But if I were to say, is there going to be something labeled the euro that survives? More likely than not, it'll be the northern euro. And what will happen to the northern euro without the southern euro? Without the southern countries, the northern euro would appreciate. And if that is the one that is there as the residual euro, bet on an increase in the value.
All right, well, thanks a lot.
Nice to
Joseph
be
Stiglitz.
here.
And thank you for watching The Street.